What up, everyone? Welcome back to my channel. This is going to be my first ever deck profile featuring Green Han. I title it Han Ramp because while not only does the leader ability ramp us, we are playing Resupply, which is the MVP of the deck. Um, for a while, I was trying to see if I could sneak an attack, a super laser tech, but I just thought it cost too many cards from Han just to try to get that high roll. But let's talk about the high roll first before we get into the deck. So, why is this deck strong? We are going to be ideally playing a 3-drop on turn 1 using Han's ability, on turn 2 playing Resupply, and then on turn 3 use Han ability to ramp to 6 resources, summon Han, attack with Han, ramp to 7 resources, and then play out either a U-Wing reinforcement or a Han Solo is the dream. Han Solo coming out on turn 3 is pretty much GG for your opponent, as anything they summon instantly dies since it has what's known in other games as First Strike. It's going to be attacking first, so it's really hard for our opponent to deal with this. We also have our 4-6 leader, which is keeping up the pressure. So if you're able to play, Ezra, resupply Han Solo as your first 3 turns of the game, you're definitely going to feel like you're cheating. And that is why we made this deck. Before I go into the deck, you'll notice that we're missing You're My Only Hope. That's more of like a casino version of Han that I see coming out sometimes. The problem with You're My Only Hope is you have to play that card right away. So if you do all your ramping in order to have enough to also play like a 7-drop, you could totally whiff and just hit a 3-drop. So unless you're getting to peak at the top of your deck with an R2D2 effect, it is pretty lackluster, and it really is like playing the casino. This version is much more consistent in what it's trying to do. So let's talk about our turn 1 play of the deck and opening mulligan. So we always want to look for resupply. The only time that I might consider not mulliganing is if I open R2D2 and C3PO in our hand, because that opening is so strong already that my opponent is going to be very annoyed. Because on turn 1, we can play R2D2 and C3PO, which both have 1-4 stats, so very hard to deal with. And I guarantee draw a card off the top of my deck, which looks for that resupply. On the next turn, they're still going to be there and still going to be hard to deal with. I'll probably get to swing with both of them and draw a second card. And for that reason, because they're drawing 2 cards, I get to dig for my resupply turn 2 play, and I might still get it. Do note that if you open resupply, you should never ramp and then play resupply. You should always ramp into a 3-drop so that you have some board control. If we do not open R2D2 and C3PO in the opening hand, the ideal turn 1 play is either Rogue Operative or Ezra, because they both have 4 defense, so they won't be dying to anything that gets played on turn 1 most of the time. And Rogue Operative swings for 4, which kills everything that's played on turn 1. And Ezra swings for 3, which kills almost everything besides these 4 health people, but it can draw a card and help us look for that resupply. Again, the idea is that we're playing this resupply on turn 2 so that we can play a 7-costed card on turn 3, which is very, very strong. So that's the general idea of the deck. Why aren't we playing Energy Lab? Because I only think it's useful on turn 1 and only against aggressive decks. And if that's the case, 5 life probably does the same thing. Because if I always want to play resupply on turn 2, then I won't be able to lab there. And I can't lab in my 7 drops. So it really only can lab in that 3-drop that I play on turn 1, which is, okay. But I don't know. I don't think it's worth the 5 life, and so we're just playing Echo Base, which gives us, all around better safety net versus a wider range of decks. If we don't hit that resupply on turn 2, there are other really strong plays that we can follow up with. Wing Leader is probably the best one. Putting a Wing Leader on our Ezra on turn 2, having us a 5-6 is pretty big, especially a 5-6 that draws us cards every turn. Fleet Lieutenant just pushes that extra damage and has a solid body. I love playing Fleet Lieutenant on, one of these 1/4s, so you get a favorable trade and maybe a look or another draw. I would say R2D2 putting a bad card from the top of your deck to the bottom is almost the same as drawing in this game because you just see so many cards. Yeah. Otherwise, these 4 drops are normally not played with 4 resources unless you totally drew absolutely awful. The 4 drops are searchers for U-Wing reinforcement, which is the MVP 7 drop of the deck. Looking at the top 10 and being able to play multiple things is really strong. Ideally, we're trying to hit the Han Solo or the Mace Windu is a 1-of as a high roll off U-Wing reinforcement. But we could be playing a 3-drop and a 4-drop. Or, you could get 4-2-1 if you're pretty lucky. So we have 6 4-drops, and they are just for the U-Wing reinforcement. You should see one every time when you look at the top 10 on average. And as you see, they're all very defensive. One has Sentinel on the ground, one has Sentinel in the air, and the other one ambushes in the air as well. So, and you can think of Fleet Lieutenant as ambush in a way, as it goes onto another unit and swings right away. Gives you multiple effects off the U-Wing reinforcement. Admiral Akbar is in here just to do a little bit of damage. It's not ideal for a turn 2 play, but it's another cool target off the U-Wing reinforcement, and that's why these are all 2s of. They're just targets off U-Wing reinforcement, and I like to have some variety in there. For the events, we play Asteroid Sanctuary and Waylay. Waylay is probably one of the best spells in the game, as bouncing a card to someone's hand is almost as good as killing it most of the time. You pay 3 to maybe return a 6 or 7, 5 cost, whatever it is, back to their hands. In terms of tempo, that's really good because your 3 resources equal their 6 resources. While they might be on different turns or even on the same turn, it's still a very strong play. We also play Asteroid Sanctuary. This card is pretty solid against a deck that wants to ramp into their leader, or let's say you're playing against Boba and you did your crazy turn 3 play, and then on turn 4 they're trying to play Boba, and you just exhaust it right away, and then shield your operative. That's pretty good. There's a lot of cool plays. This deck has a lot of strong, powerful 3 costs, and giving them shields is an already good effect. You can also slow down aggression if you needed to. But I really just wanted a cheap event to put in the deck. I used to have 5 cost units, and then I realized that 5 cost units weren't that great because when you get to 5 resources, you should be using Han ability, summoning Han, and swinging. So why play a 5-drop when you could play a 7-drop? So, our ideal opening hand is probably Ezra Resupply, U-Wing Reinforcements, or Han Solo even. We do main 1 home 1. This is more of a hedge into the super controlling matchups where I think I might need to see one of these cards to win the game. But ideally, we're winning with Resupply, and the control decks will just be really sad because they have no chance of competing with that. Before we go into the sideboard, let's talk about some major weaknesses with the deck. And one of that is Power of the Dark Side. If your opponent opens 2 of them, it can be really hard to do anything. So if you ramp into your 3-drop and they Power of the Dark Side it on the next turn, you probably don't want to do the resupply into 7-drop play unless it's a U-Ring reinforcement looking for 2 cards. Just because you might just lose your 7-drop to a second Power of the Dark Side, and that'd be a total blowout, right? Because you're spending so many cards to play your 7-drop early. I will also say that spending a lot of cards to play a 7-drop early actually doesn't hurt you that much because it is such a powerful and impactful play that if you resolve the 7-drop and it doesn't die like that, you should just win the game. Other things to consider with the deck is that we're probably not using Bright Hope's effect too often to return something to our hand, but that we can do it, right? There's a lot of optional effects here. This is something that we can do in the game, and drawing cards could be important against these controller decks. Overall, this deck does have this streamlined strategy of trying to go 3-drop, resupply, 7-drop, but against decks that are like Leia, that can swing with 2 things, they could kill your Han right on summon. And if they're killing your Han right on summon, then you're toasted, right? You ramp to 6, you summon Han, and then they're like, attack, attack, Han dead, right? So to avoid those scenarios, that is why we have these Sentinel 3 drops. That is why we play these really good statted 3 drops so that they don't have 2 dudes on board ready to swing into our Han. You know, they also have to be delaying their attacks because we're going to take a lot of actions before we summon Han, or at least we're taking the action, you know, to resource a card and maybe swing with one of our guys. So they do have to delay their turn sometimes. So that is another thing to consider. But we do want to be wary of the things that can just kill Han right up. Because he has 6 defense, though, there aren't many spells that kill Han when you have another dude on board. So it really is only those trick cards from hand, like a Fleet Lieutenant coming in, or like a Leia effect. There's also a green card that costs 1 that does Leia's effect. So those are cards to be wary of and are big weaknesses for the deck, but are very hard for your opponent to do and hold. If you see your opponent trying to hold that, you know, this is just a solid deck. Like we're playing very strong 3-drop cards that can carry us through the game. And you know, we can always still ramp a turn early to these 7 drops, and with resupply it's still 2 turns early. Like you're still playing a Han Solo 2 turns before you should instead of just 3 turns. So these are still powerful things, even if your opponent is trying to cheese your Han Solo out of existence. Okay. Major strengths of the deck we'll talk about now. This deck is very, very good into aggro because it can play a 7-drop on turn 3, but also like you're just putting a very powerful card on the board turn 3. Imagine your opponent plays the 1/3, the A wing. Oh man, I'm losing its name. Whatever, the 1/3 that has Ray 2 and red, it costs 2. You play Millennium Falcon, and you just kill it. Same turn. Wow, they're sad. You know, that play is actually so good for you that they probably just won't ever play that card against you. So you've just scared them out of playing a card just because you're playing Han, and they probably figure you're playing Falcon in your deck. And there's not really a way for them to pass and wait for it because Han lets you take an action to put a resource down. So you pretty much always get to see what they're going to do first, which is really nice. You know, it is hard to lose control of the board early. Going 3-drop turn 1, 3-drop turn 2 is just hard for aggro deck to deal with. Also notice we have a lot of Sentinels in this deck, a lot of good health stat units. We have these early game spells that can interact with their board. We're able to play multiple cards at a turn with few ring reinforcement. Our 7-drops come with ambush. That's really good. We haven't really talked about 97th Legion too much. It's just another 7-drop in our color that can close out a game. You know, just big stats that grow it's just really hard to remove for a lot of decks. And this card coming out like on turn 3, turn 4, even turn 5 sometimes, it's just too big. It can one-shot leaders, which is another big thing. And yeah, so this is a deck. It's super fun to play, first of all, and I think it's very competitive. And we look at the sideboard now. So we play 2 more home ones in our sideboard. The home ones in the sideboard are for the super controlling matchups, like the blue-black decks that we think might be playing lots of Power of the Dark Sides, might have the board wipe with ramp. You know, with home 1, we're able to play this longer game and actually be pretty successful at it. Han Solo's great at controlling the field and getting us 2-for-1s. Home 1 is just such a monster that can just beat control decks on its own, to be honest. We play 2 gunships in case they're not really ship heavy. We can take out the ambush gunship and play the just make it bigger. The strafing gunship. Yeah, great. And so that's a quick 2-for-2 sub out right there. This just helps us kill land units if we want to take favorable trades. But again, these 4-drops aren't too important because we're not really trying to play 4-drops in this deck. Why are we playing 3 Spark of the Rebellion? That's because we're already ahead of the meta and we know people are going to play this really strong deck. So we have a sideboard ready for ourselves. So this is for the mirror. We can make our opponent, we can look at their hand and discard their 7-drop while they're going for combo. and then we'll just do our combo the next turn, and we'll just win because we have a 7-drop and they donut. So, and finally played 2 Mothmas. They go with the home ones when you side them in, just for that control matchup. And if you want to know what to side them in for, usually the Asteroid Sanctuaries can come out against control, depending what they are. And probably one of these 4 drops you can take out depending what type of deck, if they try to win in the space or win on land. I'm not too concerned about having these 4 drops against control. You can also side out Akbar if they don't seem unit heavy at all, is another option. Pretty easy side out. And yeah, that's the sideboard. This deck is super fun, guys. I do think it's really competitive, but I do think if you don't get that high roll of 3-drop, resupply 7-drop, it's a pretty hard deck to navigate. Understanding win conditions in this game is very important if you want to pick up this deck and be successful at it. But you're going to have loads of fun until lots of people playing Han Solo on turn 3. Both Han Solos on turn 3. And yeah, that's my deck. I think you guys should check this one out and try it. If you notice, you can cut the mace in the home one and, in the Millennium, I guess. And, there's not many legendaries in the deck. I think if you weren't playing Millennium Falcon, this deck would pretty much function close to what it's doing. I think this card is more just for aggro. But you could cut the legendaries from this deck if you want to play a more budget-friendly version. Just add another 97th Legion to the deck, and you're cooking, guys. Like this will still be a successful deck even without the legendaries. Just think they help you be a little bit more competitive, but still it would still do what it's supposed to do, and play 7 drops on turn 3 and have lots of fun. So if you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and subscribe. If you guys think I should change something, put that in the comments. If you guys want to argue about why one card shouldn't exist over something, or you just, you watch this video, you tried out the deck, come back and leave a comment and just say, you had a blast playing the deck, or maybe you didn't like it at all. But either way, guys, thank you so much for watching. And as always, peace.